Make.com's new MCP feature allows you to connect external agents like Claude Desktop directly to your Make.com account, where it will be able to discover, understand, and execute your Make.com scenarios. You can get set up with this in just a few minutes, and in my example here, I've given this access to a bunch of different scenarios, such as being able to create a ClickUp task, generate AI images, and post to WordPress. I'll show you how to set up the connection, but it's a lot more straightforward than it looks. When you do that, Claude will instantly be able to discover any of these scenarios that are marked as on demand at the bottom. And it knows which scenarios to call and when. For example, I asked it to add a new task to my ClickUp list. From there, it called this ClickUp scenario. It responded with this URL. And when I open it up, I see it's successfully created that task. I then asked it to generate an image, for which it responded with this file.ai image that called a separate generate image scenario. And finally, I asked it to create a short post about AI agents and upload it to WordPress along with that image that was previously created. When I click on that link, I open the link and I see that that post was then drafted directly along with the image that was uploaded. And I gave Claude no instructions on how to really interact with any of these scenarios. It's all thanks to the MCP protocol. MCP stands for Model Context Protocol. And don't be too put off by the technical terms here. It's actually pretty straightforward to really understand the concept. What it is it's effectively like a USB connector for tools and services, where AI agents can interact with those tools and services without you having to give instructions and hook up integrations with each of them individually. In the examples I'm showing you, it's very easy to get Claude Desktop to connect to Make.com's MCP server. What we're doing here is we're going to API MCP access, go to add token. We'll select MCP token from there and press add. And when you do that, you can then copy out the URL. Make.com are exposing this URL so that then Claude can then ask Make.com, what scenarios do you have available? And that's exactly what happens here. When Claude connects to Make, we see that it has discovered 4 separate scenarios that it can call. And this is the real benefit of this model context protocol. When you add in new scenarios to your Make.com account and mark them as on demand, then Claude Desktop can instantly discover those without you having to manually wire up all of those integrations. But it's not just Claude Desktop. You can also hook other external tools into Make.com in the same way, as long as they have an MCP client built in and that they can understand this protocol. And also many other external services also have MCP services that we can connect to as well. Within any of these systems that you're working from, you can stack all the capabilities of these systems together by connecting very simply via MCP. And you'll understand the process for that a lot more by the end of this video. Claude will also understand what parameters we need to send to those scenarios. For example, for this generated image scenario, this is just simply a HTTP module which is going to call an external image service. At the very bottom here, we see these scenario inputs and outputs. For this scenario input, we have image prompt. And for the description here, I can just say the prompt used to generate the AI image. So this scenario input is key because that is exactly what Claude is going to pass in to this scenario. And then from whatever module you're working in, then you can then select that particular scenario input by selecting the custom and system variables here and then selecting your input. The exact same thing applies for this other ClickUp scenario. At the very bottom, I have a task title. That's the title for the task. And then scroll down to task description, the task description, and additional information and comments to add to the task. So again, when Claude is calling each of those scenarios, this MCP server tells Claude what inputs it expects whenever it's calling any of those scenarios. So by default, just by adding these scenario inputs, then Claude will know which ones to populate. And then we also have scenario outputs. So at the end of this particular ClickUp scenario, we're going to respond with the task URL, and then that's going to be return the output. From there, once we add this return output scenario, we can then pass in the URL that was generated by ClickUp. We see here that when Claude called that scenario, it responded with the ClickUp URL. Let's get into setting up your Make MCP connection. But if you want to learn more about MCP, then check out this great video that Daniel published on our main channel, which explains this protocol in much more detail and goes through some more advanced use cases using N8N. So once you go to this Make MCP server page, it just shows us just a few requirements that you need to get set up. First off, make sure to go to your profile, API MCP access, add your token, go to MCP token, and then copy out your MCP URL. So if you're using Claude Desktop, for example, scroll down and you can see the instructions. Copy out this configuration example. It is straightforward. Don't be put off by all of this JSON code. Within Claude, go to File and Settings, and I'm going to zoom in a bit there. For developer, go to Edit Config, and then you'll see this Claude Desktop config file. You can just go and open that up. I'll open it up with whatever application you want. To start with, this file will probably be blank or just have these curly brackets. Just delete everything in the file and paste that in just here, and make sure you have no spaces at the end. Press save. Okay, then from there you might need to restart Claude Desktop. So I'm just going to quit and go to Claude and start again. And then click on this search and tools. From there, scroll down and you can see that it now has access and has been able to discover each of these make scenarios. Now I have lots of make.com scenarios, so you might be wondering, why has it only picked these ones up? Well, that's because these are the only active ones that I have within this particular account right now that are marked as on demand. So within the scheduling, within Make, you can schedule them for regular intervals, specify dates, or as on demand. So this is the type of scheduling that's required for this. So press save. Make sure this toggle is enabled and green just here, and press save. And then this should show up within Claude, or else you may need to restart Claude for that to take effect. But you do not even need to go into this menu. You should just be able to call those scenarios using natural language. So in this very basic example, I have this ClickUp task. In this, it's just a create a task module. I've selected my workspace space, and I've went to the custom and system variable section here. I've selected this task title, which is over there, and the task description, and press save. Then once I go back to Claude, I can just ask it to create a ClickUp task about AI agents in make.com. Okay, then I've pressed return, and now it's going to create that task. So you see, it's come up with this request. You can set this to either always run, so allow always or allow once. If it's hitting an external system where it's going to cost money for you to do it, or if you want to be very careful about when this calls your API, then you can just select allow once and just manually approve that every single time. I'm going to select it in this case, but you can also select allow always. So I'll select allow once. You see the request here, it's already populated this task title, the task description, solely based off what we had within these scenario inputs. It's responded with this ClickUp URL. So now I'll just click on that, click open link, and there we go. It created a title. Not only that, it also expanded out on this. So instead of just passing in some simple text, it used its AI intelligence to expand out on what I initially asked and then created a longer description. So that's cool. Let's go to a new chat. Okay, now I'll get it to generate an AI image. Generate an image of an AI agent. So I'll press enter and let's see what prompt it's going to send. So again, I'm going to select allow once. So we're being careful about what requests we're sending to our make scenarios. And here we have an image prompt. It's created a pretty long image prompt. And from there, it should hopefully return back with that image. Okay, it says it's created it, but we actually do not have an image URL. Whereas if I scroll down here, we see that we did actually get a response back. So I could just copy this out and then entering that URL into my browser, but I'll just respond back here and say, give me the image URL. Okay, here's the URL. I'll click on that, open link. There we go. That's a pretty cool image. That one is using Flux 1.1 Ultra. Next up, I'm going to ask it to create a simple WordPress post and then pass in this image URL while it's doing that. So I'm expecting it to call this scenario. When I go to scenario inputs, we have title, content, and image URL. So for the title, it is post title. And then we have content, description. The post content must be in HTML format. This is super important. This is a good example of how you can be very specific about what kind of formats and what kind of content you're expecting within your parameters. We're expecting Claude to send in properly formatted HTML into this, because if it does not, then it's not going to render properly within WordPress. We're going to add in this description and hopefully Claude will then follow that. And then finally, we have the image URL, the URL of the image to be added as the featured image. So I'll press save. I'm starting off with a HTTP module. I'm getting the file. So this is the image URL that will be passed in from Claude, hopefully. After that, I'm uploading the image to WordPress. I've gone through this in a bunch of other videos. I have an explainer of exactly how this module works and how to use it, so check out the link in the description for that. But this is going to upload that image to WordPress. After that, we're populating the title and the content from the scenario inputs. So these should be populated via Claude's parameters that are sent. Then at the very end, we're getting that post based on the ID, and then we're sending back the post link, the post URL, that then Claude can then show to the user. And that post URL is added as a scenario output at the end, the post URL that has been created. So I'll press save. Press save again. And now finally, I'm just going to ask it to write an article about AI agents in 2025. Search the web for up-to-date facts and figures. In this case, I'm using Claude's Pro plan, which has access to the live web, which is pretty cool. This MCP integration still works in the free version of Claude, but you might run into limits on how many messages you can send a day and limits in the types of models you can use. And you also do not have these extra integrations. But this will work on either the free version or the paid version. Okay, so it's still creating this pretty long article based on some of its research previously. Now that we have an article created, I'm going to reply and ask it to publish this to WordPress. Also use the image that was previously created. So it looks like it's calling the correct scenario. It's constructed what looks like correct HTML. Again, this is where that scenario input within Make is pretty vital. Okay, it's asking would I like to use this external integration. I'll select allow once. Now we'll wait for that to execute. Excellent. It says, great, I've successfully published your article to WordPress. I've added a test website within my Make.com scenario. So I'm going to press on this. Select open link. This is looking great apart from the fact that it duplicated the heading. So we should go into this scenario input down here. Within the scenario inputs here, I'll go to content. The post content must be in HTML format. Do not include the post title or heading 1 at the start. Okay, I'll press save. From there, it should not include this heading at the very start. But other than that, it's uploaded the image, assigned it to this post. We have headings. We have bullet points, we have lots of different sections, we have numbered lists. This is quite a long article, and this was created in a very minimal integration that we had just set up without even having to wire any of these scenarios together. You might be wondering, do I need to give these external systems access to all of my on-demand scenarios within Make? And the answer is no. You can also define separate tool access control. So within your URL, for example, I go to Claude, File, Settings, go to developer and then edit config. When I open this up, you can add your organization ID or your team ID or the scenario IDs that you want to give this agent access to. So you can be very specific about that. Now that you understand the concepts of connecting Claude Desktop to Make.com, you should have an overall feel of how this MCP, this Model Context Protocol, works, so that then you can connect other external agents and assistants that have MCP clients built into them in exactly the same way as how Claude connected to our scenarios earlier on. So it gives you a massive amount of flexibility in being able to use these external systems without having to individually integrate with each of them separately. But MCP is quite a big topic, so make sure to check out the link in the description if you want to learn a little bit more about the protocol. And if you want to get way ahead with AI automation, then check out the link in the description to our community. We'll get access to all of our automation templates. You can join hundreds of fellow automators through our active discussion boards and our live workshops. And you get instant access to all of these courses right away. Hope to see you there. Thanks for watching.